Hi, my name is Philip Bither. I'm the Curator for Performing Arts here at the Walker Arts Center. And with me, I'm so pleased, Makaya McCraven, drummer, band leader, beat scientist, composer. And we're just a few hours away from the premiere of a brand new suite of music with video called In These Times, which the Walkers helped commission a bit. And you guys have been here a few days. And I just wondered, after this remarkable 5 years, 5 years ago or so, In the Moment and Universal Beings, this kind of trajectory you've been on, what did you see when you started thinking about a work like In These Times? What did you see it offering you as a new opportunity?
I mean, this piece really is, in many ways, represents just kind of the work I've been doing for much longer than the last 5 years.
Sure, right.
A couple of the pieces are like folk pieces that have been passed directly on from my parents,
Because your mother's from
my
Hungary
mother is a
originally.
Hungarian folk
Yeah.
musician, and my
Yeah.
father's a musician, and so
Yeah.
like their work has kind of like been a big part of what I do.
Yeah.
And then I don't
Did
know.
you consciously think about this as almost an autobiographical, like a place to reflect on your
Absolutely,
your
yeah.
family and
No,
your
it's
history?
absolutely kind of a very personal project in that way. And coming off of the In the Moment kind of process that
Yeah,
I've been employing, was a place to like really delve into some of my writing and kind of have this kind of these works that I've been playing and kind of working on and developing as kind of part of a repertoire to really fully realize them,
Right.
in this large ensemble. At the end of when we finished Universal Beings, and we put together kind of a large presentation of that, and that's kind of been a direct. It's been a direct evolution, right? Where it's like when I did these big concerts
in Europe and at LPR.
in Europe and LPR
yeah.
in Chicago. We
Right.
made these kind of group where really brought together and a bunch of people that really also the way I like to work with music. I like to work with people who are really personally connected with me.
Right.
I call people that I know.
Right. Yeah.
Or that I
Yeah.
have and I like the music to be personal and be collective in that sense, because then. Really what I try to get at in performance is to create an environment and a space where we can feel something.
Right.
And
yeah.
those intangible feelings and those just things that give you goosebumps or make you feel something. And that's really, I think having a space where you're working with people that you can feel vulnerable with.
Right.
And you can feel comfortable with, especially if you're working with personal material. That's really important to me, and then
Right.
also is important how which material we're working with as well.
But compositionally, did you see this as a longer form piece? I know there's individual parts that you've drawn from some past material, brand new material, things drawn from your family's history and things, but you've shaped it into a suite essentially.
Yeah.
And, was that something you felt like you wanted to do from the start? Oh, I'm going to make this kind of arc with the
Absolutely.
work.
I kind of like to do that with all my work.
Yeah, sure.
And that's a big part of like the way I make records.
Yeah.
Is like I like the thing to have a narrative. The narrative is really important to me. The through line is everything.
Right.
It's like I like it to play like an experience or a film or something like that.
Right.
I like that feeling as you go into a performance and it's light out, or like you go to the movie
Right.
and you come out of the movie and it's dark and you're like, what happened to the time?
I've gone to a new place, yeah.
Yeah, because while you were in there, you transcended time or your perception of time.
Right.
And so, I kind of feel like that's a part of all my work. It's like I really want there to be a narrative, and the narrative and the way that the music connects and flows is as important as the music.
Right.
It's actually the experience is more important than the music to me. Actually, the process is more important than the music.
Yeah.
I like. That's what I like about oral tradition. That's what I like about improvising. That's what I like about being in the moment.
Right.
That's what I like about playing without sheet music.
Yeah.
I like the process, the experience. I like when the musicians are on their toes. I like when people, when there's danger in the music, when there's something unexpected is available.
Right.
These are the things that I feel create the tension and drama, for the human experience
Right.
to come out.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, in this thing where it's not, am I just up here acting like I feel this way,
Right.
or performing something?
Yes, right.
But I am giving something.
Yeah. Is that
Real
how
and
you're-
in the moment? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's,
totally.
to me, there's a difference there. You know, and so, you know, I really have come from a place of experiential
Right.
music.
Yeah.
Oral tradition, playing communally, and
Yeah.
I like when with the audience is part of that.
Right.
You know, in the last few records, I mean, the audience was part of the.
Yeah, because you used so much of
It's,
it
you know,
live. And,
yeah. And that energy in the space is real. It's tangible.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something. That's what's really amazing. Like some of the times, you know, say you're in a noisy bar or
Yeah,
club,
yeah.
and there's a band playing,
Right.
and something happens in the music, and everybody kind of stops their conversations.
Yeah, right.
Not because it was like a jazz club and everybody was told to be quiet,
Right.
but the music warranted it,
Huh.
and everybody now is tuned into something.
Right.
You know, and when that's happening, you feel something.
Yeah.
And that thing you can feel is often very hard to put into literal words.
Right.
Right. And,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
when they say music is a language, but I can't ask you to pass the salt.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I may be able to communicate something to you that would be like the literal word may be insufficient.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
In communicating something that's a feeling, something
Yeah.
that's like. It's just in the air,
An
you know,
energy
and
almost.
energy, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, there's a lot of ways you could call it. People, you deal in spirituality, there's
Right.
in metaphysics, and just you know, energy and,
Right.
and the spirit. But whatever it is, I think it's pretty clear when it's around, and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
can recognize that.
Do you feel like you, as an individual band leader, an artist, musical artist, outside of composition, outside of your relationship with the band members who tonight they're so close with so many of these figures you've played with, but in terms of your ability to create that kind of experience, it's almost like an experienced sculpture, where you have created a relationship with audience, and has that been honed over time? Are you able to create that energy
Absolutely,
with
yeah. I mean, I
audience?
think it's something that, you know, definitely you learn things that work and things that don't work,
Right.
or you know, the delicate process of the human interaction, even with the band members. You know, I think
Right.
one thing with like leading a band or a group of people who are collaborating together,
Yeah.
is creating a space that all these people feel comfortable
Right.
and happy,
Yeah.
and
that just translates to the audience.
and it translates to their performance.
Right, sure.
You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one thing I've grown to really dislike in the studio, you know, particularly in studio sessions, this happens, but it can happen with live performers too. But you go in and everybody's like, you know, all these incredible players, and we go in and you play, and everybody walks in afterwards and they're like, oh,
Right.
I played like crap. And everybody,
Huh.
and the morale starts to go down. And the
Huh.
more the morale goes down, the worse the music gets.
Where's that come from, do you
It
think?
comes from the same layers of self-doubt that artists always have to deal with. You know, there's always a push and pull between ego and your ego and humility.
Right,
As an artist,
right.
you know, you have to have the ego to even show up.
Right.
You know, to present something. But you have to have the humility to constantly be evaluating yourself and
Right.
trying to push yourself and grow. So I think it's one of the difficult challenges of being an artist, that dichotomy.
I thought
know?
you were going to say maybe that in a studio people are a bit more nervous because they only have one chance. They're
Maybe
just trying to
you have more
lock it in,
chances.
or-
No,
yeah,
you gotta go do it again.
Right,
we
right.
can
It's true.
we can do it again.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
You know, but the immediacy of the live performance.
Right.
Is like you can't do it again.
Yeah, that's true. It's
So
the
you're
opposite.
forced to be
Right.
there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something. There's something magical there. You know.
Yeah. And in the normal live performance, you feel like, okay, it's one moment, I go on to the next city or whatever. You're capturing everything live tonight, as you often do.
Yeah,
so it may
those
be locked
moments
in too.
are I mean, it could be locked in.
Yeah.
But we're not thinking about that.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's more like, you know, let's capture something that you couldn't necessarily just dream
Yeah,
up.
right.
You know?
Right.
And because for me, you know, there's so much beauty and depth in the unknown. Right? And that's where all the biggest and best and hardest questions in life lie.
Right. Huh.
Right? You know, the questions you can't answer.
Yeah. Right.
You know, when you're breaking somewhere that's not there before. You
Right.
know what I
Yep.
mean? And there's ways, you know, that can be really scary, but it can be liberating, you know?
Is that why you've preserved enough open sections in the composition to make sure there's that chance for immediate, you know, energy and electricity and change?
I have all these incredible people on
Yeah,
stage. Like,
right.
what could happen?
Right, sure.
You know,
Even
what
though
do
they've
they
got
know
a fair
that I
amount
don't know?
scored, they still, and they have
I
enough freedom.
encourage them to not play what I give them.
Oh, wow.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I like to be. I want to be free.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be free.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Yep.
beauty in the freedom. You
Yeah.
know, it's structured. That's I think jazz.
Yeah.
You know, in that sense, is very much a. It's like life, right? We all are improvising.
Right.
We're always improvising. All
Yeah.
of us are
Yeah.
improvising. Anybody who says they're not improvising
Yeah.
is lying.
Right.
You know, because
Like you said the other day, I heard an interview. It's like we're improvising right
we're
now.
improvising.
Yeah.
You have to. It's just this. It's life,
Yeah.
and we make structure
Right.
to our days and to our world. But then you still got to improvise.
Yeah,
Because
right,
it doesn't work out how you
Yeah,
think it's going to work out.
Could you talk about Kim Alpert's work? She's an artist who makes video work and is doing a live video composition, really, in some ways. Do you think of her as a 10th musician, really? Because she's improvising as well. And
That's so one thing that I, you know, immediately was drawn to with Kim was her kind of openness to flow in
Right.
the moment and
Yeah.
her ability to kind of get in there
Right.
with us, you know? And there is a feedback with the motion and sound. You know, it's something I learned a long time ago. I was working a lot with dancers.
Yeah, sure.
When I was in college, just kind of I was working for the dance department and doing a lot of accompanying and
Yeah.
doing some MFA programs and stuff. And then I did a lot of stuff in Chicago in later years with tap dancers and such.
Huh.
But one thing that we used to do when I used to play for technique classes.
So you're accompanying
We're
dancers
accompanying
and-
technique,
yeah,
just
right, sure.
just a technique classes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like several hours a week. But our job really, we didn't have tunes to play. We would improvise to their warm-ups.
Huh.
Right?
Right.
And at the end of the class, you know, the girls would come and be like, "Thank you guys so much. I really love to dance to your music." And I used to be like, I was playing to your motion.
Yeah.
You know, we were playing to you.
Yeah,
I was,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And that is the same thing, you know, working with a video artist like
Yeah, yeah.
Kim. There's this kind of push and pull with the imagery,
Yeah,
you know.
yep.
And though I'm not like tuned into it all the time, you know, particularly with some of the you know, some of the footage she has, and like there's a lot of kind of
There's historic footage.
historic footage. There's footage from my past,
Right.
You know, and
there's just abstract graphic.
there's abstract graphic that's kind of like can weave in there,
Right.
and also with some imagery of
the liveness.
of the group. So,
Right, yeah.
you know, you kind of like transpose between different
Sure.
spaces, you know,
And layers on layers and-
layers
yeah.
on layers, yeah. And so, but it's definitely for me, it's like, you know, when I go and I get tuned into it, definitely it's like another layer of like of just feelings
Yeah,
and,
right.
and stuff to like
Yeah.
to like just process and you know, one thing about instrumental music, and I think this really speaks to broadening into this space of with the video
Right.
and with the audio
Yeah.
clips. And one of the things I've always loved about instrumental music is this lack of the literal word.
Right, sure.
You know, without the context of a title of the song.
Right.
You know, or a description.
Yeah.
You know, it's completely
It's abstract.
It's completely abstract.
Right,
You know.
yeah.
And we have ideas that like, okay, soft music may
Yeah.
make us feel like this, and you
Right.
can't pull some kind of pretty literal
Yeah.
at times, you know,
Yeah.
soft, loud, aggressive,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
harmonically, you know, major, minor, the dense harmony,
Sure.
you know, all these different things. But ultimately, you know, you're gonna kind of pull from it. But once you add, you know, component of the visual
Images, yeah.
images, and once you add some component of narrative like dialogue,
Yeah.
you know, and context, then all of a sudden we have a completely different thing where we can kind of more acutely delve into issues and connect, you know, and these are different ways to create that feeling, a feeling, something that's a little more abstract.
But you've kept maybe you might want to talk briefly about the historic images and the historic audio samples, voice samples that you're using tonight. You've kept them evocative, and we hear James Baldwin, we hear Sidney Poitier or someone, but we don't. It's still abstracted enough that you allow an openness.
Well, you know, I mean, in the context of the music too,
right?
You know, like I still want the music to shine,
right?
You know, and I have, you know, been working with and experimenting with dialogue for some time,
right?
And one of the challenges sometimes is like it can be there's sound challenges, but there's also just. It could be a lot of words, you know. It's like I don't want the concert to turn into a lecture.
Yes, right. And you're triggering those words as part of your drum set.
I want to be able to, I want them to come in when I want them to come in, you know, and it's set as in the narrative. But I mean, I think for me, keeping them a little bit abstract, and that also just like I'm drawn to things of some universality, you know. I like these kind of broader statements that are a little can be provocative, but they make you think, or they connect to your experience, or they say something that maybe you couldn't say yourself,
right?
You know, or maybe it's just like a little. It's just a little.
You mean a phrase.
It's just a phrase that, you know, and also and everything also kind of. It all aligns with the musical content.
Sure.
Yeah, you know. So.
But there's a social and political base on in these times in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk about that a minute? Maybe is it about this moment in time of we're living in, and what prompted you to want to?
I think you know that the beauty, right? You think about it is like you say in these times.
Right.
It doesn't. It could be. You could be talking about right now, which is very tense and challenging times, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, historically we've been dealing with very challenging times, and in the future we're also going to be. We are all in these times.
Right. Yeah.
You know, speaking of an idea. So, you know, and originally, you know, the title started to be prompted. Because a lot of the musical selection is really dealing within time meters, so it was really originally, you know, a nod to the meters,
like a time signature.
Yeah, so we're because we're playing an 11/8,
sure,
we're playing a 7/8, we're playing in 5/4 and 5/8 and 5 against 3 kind of.
I never even thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the original thing was like we're dealing with these multimeters, polyrhythms, and I like to deal with the meters in a way that ultimately feels really comfortable and accessible for a listener, and not an academic exercise in counting to 11.
No,
and this is directly coming from my experience with my mother, who was a Hungarian folk musician. And so as I grew up playing music, you know, she was teaching us 11/8, short, short, long, short, long. And there's a dance that is associated with that, which people in a folk community can do, you know. And then they're gonna say, I got to go to, you know, a conservatory to learn to count to 11. But there is a very in the body, organic rooted way that we're also dealing with odd meters, you know. And so this is being a big part of the compositional work is the meters, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of was getting me to thinking about times and challenging times, difficult times. And it's around that time I was also connecting with in these times the paper,
the Progressive
magazine out of Chicago, you know, and tying into my mother's work. Really, my mother, not only was she a folk musician, but my mother was born in a prison in Hungary after the war. She was found by her parents and let out. They were both politically involved, and my grandfather was in the military, and so she became a big political activist in her youth through music, right? And her group, Kalinda, one of a couple of Black Orfeo and Kalinda, two of the groups that were quite popular in Hungary and was touring around Europe. They were doing provocative music where they were looking at Eastern European folk music, gypsy music, Romanian music, Hungarian music, Bulgarian music, across borders that were being redrawn and all this stuff. And kind of seeing, like, talking about the music as a way of looking at this music as a similar people. And you know?
Trying to build connections.
And this is not really popular, you know? And so she was eventually, you know, left Hungary over the Berlin Wall.
Forced out? Or escaped?
Basically, because a lot of her band members were getting in trouble with the law for things they were saying. They were coming back from being on the road and playing all over Europe and saying whatever they're saying. You know, and they come back, and so she left. And my father was living in Paris, who's back in Paris now, and it was a kind of a, you know, black expat living in France, jazz musician.
The way Art Ensemble or many other artists.
He was playing with guys like Sam Rivers and Yusuf Lateef and Archie Shepp, and was very much, you know, I wouldn't necessarily maybe an activist in terms of like action, but just in the lifestyle and presentation, and just there's a sheer inherent political nature to that music, that time, and all this music. I believe, you know. So like all of these elements come into this project, right? We're talking about activism, right? We're talking about in these times the paper. I'm talking about the music of my parents who were. They were playing African folk music in that jazz avant-garde way, living overseas as an expat. I was born in Paris. This is my mother came from Hungary doing folk music. They taught me this music orally, and I've always been attracted to making music in this way, and I've always felt that the music that I make and the things that I do, I want to have greater meaning and greater purpose, without necessarily having to literally even do anything, because the music is powerful enough. You know, and this is what my life has been. You know, and I think, you know, it was interesting when I got interviewed in these times. The whole thing was really featured.
This was in 2014 about
2014,
being a working musician.
About being a working musician, and. You know, I got a lot of people reached out to me when that was published. You know, musicians all over the world.
You were speaking the truth in that article, and I think a lot of musicians found it.
A lot of people found it, and a lot of people said it. You know, and to me, I didn't think I really said that much other than like what was like what is
the real deal,
the real deal, and what I've seen from the time I was born, and you know, whether my dad was on the road touring with musicians, or my mom went back to music school, became a music educator. You know, I've always kind of been in this world. You know, and that connection with just like the working person. You know. In these times, social movement, what's going on, the tenseness in this world. You know, it all just made sense. It's made a lot of sense.
So interesting, the interview with you as a working musician, because it spoke also to issues of inequity.
Absolutely.
And you know how our culture has, the haves and have-nots have just gotten wider apart.
And how the arts are not valued. You know, and you see that inequity within the arts. You know, very quickly.
Is it ever hard? This relates to a different tact or set of questions I had for you. Now, with the kind of visibility and acclaim you've received in recent years, you know, is it ever hard to feel like, am I viewed now as one of the haves rather than the have-nots? Because I know these things are all relative.
Because I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Because you know, like the haves are still dealing in a much different space.
Totally.
You know, than I'm dealing in. You know.
But
yes, no, you know, and. You know, what I could speak to the challenges of still being an artist, right? Well, one, you're very busy. You know, you don't always feel valued. You know, it's still hard to make a living. You know, in the real sense, it's like, okay, well, it's one thing, like Chicago's a great town for the working class musician to be able to make a living and be able to live.
Yeah.
But it's like, what I want from my work is, in terms of like a career, right, is the same thing that like the average American
middle
would
class.
want. Yeah,
right.
I want to be able to send my kids to college.
Yeah,
right. I want to be able to own a home.
Right.
And have like health insurance.
Yeah.
And have some sort of plan to
It's
retire.
not these luxuries.
Retire at some
right.
point, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to be 75 on the road.
Right.
Like
right.
most musicians
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
If they're so lucky to still have a
yeah.
gig. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so,
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not trying to ask for that much.
Yeah.
And so like, there's like this idea of have-nots. And I also feel like, I seen people's careers as like since I was a kid, you could be up now, you could be down later. And
right,
so,
right.
who knows if there's a gig tomorrow?
Yeah,
I don't
which
know.
is funny
I don't know.
to hear you say that, because I think of you as, within your generation, one of the most accomplished and successful in recent years. But
I don't know.
I wondered,
I mean,
like, how does it feel to have, in some ways, and maybe this is none of your problem, or hopefully you don't have to worry about it, but the world, the critical world, I think, seems to have anointed, or in some ways they presumed that you should assume this mantle of a leading force for the next wave of jazz, or the next your generation in jazz. Do you feel like that puts an unfair kind of crazy pressure, or do you feel like
no?
Or how do you see yourself in the history, in the jazz history sort of world?
I think the history is now. I think
Right.
we're all participating.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm unique in any way.
Right.
I feel fortunate that I get to participate. At the level I'm participating.
Right.
Yeah. So and I can acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But this is not about me. It is a community of musicians, and without that, there is no more music. Right. I mean, right now it's really another challenge is we're seeing a lot of the elders go really quickly. In the genre. This genre.
Recently.
A lot of people are passing.
Right.
Every couple weeks, I see different
Yeah.
people, and so what's left over from the actual physical connection from the founders of the music, or the innovator, the earliest innovators, is almost completely gone. It's like, because I do believe there's something in the oral experience, right?
Sure.
That there's almost like a literal touch. If I get to not just sit there and transcribe somebody, but you sat with the man, and then I get to sit with you. There's something maybe I might get that's different than just looking at imitating, the idiom. But like, because I'm more interested in like what exactly the cats played, but what they were thinking. What were they feeling?
Do you feel an alignment in some ways? It's amazing to me the community. Maybe you would say you haven't single-handedly built, but you're part of, and in so many ways, a leader of a whole, it feels like a renaissance in Chicago of musicians who are intersecting with each other, who are supporting each other, who are part of this bigger scene. It does at times remind me of the AACM era, when people were sharing information and a lot of self-determination around producing their own shows. And
a lot of self-determination in Chicago.
Yeah.
Some of that's out of necessity, some of that's out of not having the resources or the backing of the large institutions.
Of the institutions,
right? And so you create your own spaces and your own ways of doing things. In your own community. And Chicago's a great place for that. And it's always been. And I grew up doing that with my band and on the East Coast. And when I moved to Chicago, it was a really nice place for that. And I think, there was some provincialness there and some kind of, some older guards and stuff. But I feel like everything that was happening for Chicago was there already.
Oh, really? So you don't feel like this is a unique moment where suddenly all these
it's a great time.
Yeah,
it's a great era, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of great artists here,
Right.
and my friends and colleagues are incredible.
Right.
So I'm just
a lot of them are making their own brilliant records.
World-class
And
people. It's really exciting, and I feel really grateful for them and learning from them, being around them. Even from guys like Jeff Parker to guys like my age, like Marquise. to guys like Joel Ross, who's not with us, but who's like 23 years old, you know, and it's incredible, you know. So really great people around.
And then, but you have.
But I think, you know, there's a movement right now in the larger music, you know, that this type of music is just being more accepted.
Right,
You know, and it's just more sought after. There's more young people engaged into it. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of reasons. I really do. I think the music industry had taken a turn where there was a gap.
Right.
For creative music.
Right.
Because a lot of pop just kind of took such a lion's share of the market, and I don't think everybody could get down with that for forever.
Sure.
You know, and so I think there was some demand, you know,
definitely
for more interesting, more depth, more provocative work. Right. You know, and people just wanting a more unique live experience. You know? And I could say that with like doing some of the like, you know, really kind of improvised underground, like really underground type of things. You know, it's like there's a refreshing thing where people are just like, wow, I've never experienced, I've never done that, you know, and it's like, and they're young and it's like cool, you know.
In another era, people might have just written it off as like, that's just way too weird, or it's just avant-garde, or it's noise, or whatever. Now, younger people seem, there's an attraction.
I think they want something. I think there's something they want from the psychedelic side. There's something about the freedom of it. I think there's something about just the pressures of this world right now, where people want something real to escape to, that they're not gonna. That's just more visceral and more emotive and more human. Because we're fed so many things that are really like it's just everything's like really contained and really in a box, and I think it's you know people
it's super exciting.
People want something.
Do you ever feel like sometimes you know, in some ways there was an era maybe until just recently where people in the vanguard of jazz or improvised music or experimental music might have been afraid to use a backbeat or to have a rhythm that is a pulse in any way, and because that was a sign of sort of selling out or something.
Right.
And now you seem to like just naturally able to combine both.
Sure.
But it does give people, in some ways, without it seeming like in any way kind of sellout, something to hang on to as they go on the journey.
Well, I think it's a very interesting space, right?
Right.
Because I've always kind of felt like, as a musician, it's like I was, you know, too straight ahead for the out guys,
right? And
too out for the straight ahead guys, and too straight ahead for the hip hop guys, but too hip hoppy for for these guys, you know. Right. And then it's like, but I'm too world music for everybody, you know, and I don't do any of it good enough, you know, and so I'm just gonna
do what you want to do.
I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do, you know what I mean? I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I want to make music that I want to make, and that I like.
Right.
I want to feel. I want to feel. I want to have the experience. It's emotional for me.
Right.
You know, this is. As much as it's for me to connect with you, but it's for me to say something that I feel. Yeah. You know, that's real.
Think people responded to that.
And it's like that's real. Like it's like and like I talk to so many musicians. I mean, it's it's broadening now, but like talk to so many people, and it's like, oh man, I want to do this, and I'm making my new record. I'm like, play me a new record. And I'm like, okay. And then you go after the thing, and you go in their car, and they you turn on the car, and like the stereo comes on. I'm like, You're not listening to anything like what you're making. You know? Right. And you go through the whole playlist, and it's like, but you listen to this music, but you want to play this. Don't you want to find something where it's like you can really pull from your influence? Can't just say something? That's really what I've been on. I just want to. I grew up with a wide range of music, you know, and that's why in my show we might be swinging. We might play free. I might play a backbeat. I might want to do this. We might play modal. I might want to play changes. You know, we might write a song in an odd meter. You know, I might want to do something that's really technically challenging for me on the instrument, just because I like to play the drums, and that's another thing. And maybe I don't want to play a whole show of that. You know. And so, I was really inspired when I met Jeff Parker. in Chicago, you know. He's been a great friend and mentor even, you know. But I remember moving to Chicago, and this guy's playing this like kind of weird free jazz gig at this like sushi spot, you know, on Tuesdays with all these hipsters everywhere. You know, and then he's playing this, like he's playing Andes, and then he jet straight ahead, and he was playing with Joey DiFrancesco and an organ trio, and then he's playing with the art ensemble or like AACM and doing all this like, you know, really progressive out music.
And then post rock.
And then he's like most known for playing with an indie band.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then I went to his MySpace page, right, back then, and he had like a whole bunch of like really killing hip hop beats. You know, all these beats and sampling all this stuff. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be free. I want to be free.
And here's Jeff with you tonight.
And here's Jeff with me, you know.
One last thing before we wrap that I wanted to ask you about, that you seem to have also unique chops that you've developed. This whole movement of taking live material, going back into the studio, splicing, cutting, pasting, adding effects, creating something new out of something that existed in a moment. It seemed like the fact that you then sometimes would take that and apply it back to liveness, a band will have, you know, listen to those, know those records, and then sort of it reconstitutes itself in a live setting. It almost takes like something with somebody, Brian Eno maybe, or someone who started using the studio as an instrument, but then takes it to another level.
Well, this is what kind of what we're talking about, process.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The process is an inherent part of the music.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's part of the music was written because of the process.
Oh,
Right?
Right.
The music came from the freedom of kind of this space. And then we're also kind of dealing with, well, what is a composition?
Right. Yeah.
Like what is improvisation?
Right.
You know, are we composing when we improvise? Is it spontaneous composition?
Right.
And at what point do I get to call what I put down a composition?
Right.
Like which point is it a composition?
Yeah.
And at which point am I spontaneously composing?
Yeah.
And if you compose something, aren't you still like improvising it?
Yeah.
You know? And so like the composition to me is like the frozen improvisation. And so I do it in kind of a literal sense where we're gonna play open, let the spirit of the unknown happen, something magic, right?
Yeah,
Try to
sure.
allow this space for magic, and
Right.
a vulnerable space for magic, where we're entering a space we don't know what we're gonna do, and it's not as controlled, and it's just like, there's like a lot of variables there.
Right.
But that's where I find there's a lot of magic, and when I can capture that and then distill that through the post-production.
What you do in the studio.
Right, and then I think about that, and it's like, okay, well, that is a beautiful moment, you know, or a beautiful kind of segment. Like, how do I extrapolate this into like a clearer form for a presentation of that moment, right? And then I distill that. Now we have a composition on our hands.
Because
right,
have you continued to compose it in the studio?
Well, so then I can take that beat, right, and I can take that recording and I can put it back in as a DJ, and I can flip it again, and it's just slightly different.
Right.
And then I'll take my band, and we can learn that piece as what it is now,
right,
as it is, and then we're going to perform that and interpret it in real time with improvise, just like a jazz band would interpret any piece. We could record that, and I could flip it again it's a regenerative process of.
Can it just keep going?
And it can keep going, and like. That to me also is kind of like jazz, and it's not totally unique. Sampling is part of the history of jazz
and hip hop.
Right. But like, I mean, literally, like jazz. I mean, vocabulary.
Right. Sure.
Is like sampling, right? That we use
referencing other people's tunes.
Other people, playing other people's tunes.
Right. Sure.
Similar intros, tags.
Right.
You know, turnarounds.
Right.
Right. These are all ideas of reusing. You know, standard vocabulary or actual music, and reinterpreting it. You know.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's part of the process, and also like looping, taking idea and repeating it, both in short form and then within longer form inside of it. It's a loop music, it's beat music, but it's also the very basic tenets of jazz music or Black American music. You know, right, where we're dealing with congruent loops. Recurring form, improvising over structure,
Yep.
structured improvisation,
Yeah.
you know, and so I'm just using technology, you know, as a tool because I love sample-based hip hop, and
Yeah, sure.
found it fascinating to repurpose audio in another place, you know,
Right.
and like it's something that, you know, they made us do in jazz school.
Yeah, right.
Reharmonize this tune.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right. Yeah.
rearrange this
classic.
This classic.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, it's part of the it's in the culture. You know, and so
Yeah.
I feel like it's a pretty kind of smooth
Sure.
step over
Yeah.
into hip hop in that sense as well.
Well, you know, this has been such a great 2 or 3 days of having you here and seeing these remarkable musicians work together, and Kim with working on the video side. We're so looking forward to tonight. I just want to finish with, what do you see the future of in these times, or what do you imagine or hope for it, or could you conjure that after tonight, what will happen?
Well, I mean, I hope we get to do it
Yeah.
like a few more times.
Yeah,
you
sure,
know, as
right.
as a
thing.
as a full presentation.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely. And there may be some opportunities for that in the future.
You
but
might draw some of this material
some
in
of
a
the
future record.
Yeah, no, I mean that was the other thing we didn't really get into. But like some of the kind of open places and just performance, you know, it may be part of, because it's all part of a recording
A next
project.
recording, yeah.
And so, you know, I think that's also a big thing. Once the record is like finished and
Right.
fully realized,
Yeah.
you know, then we can continue,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. on with-
Fantastic.
yeah.
And that'll be next year sometime.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, I'm on a pretty strict deadline.
Yeah, right. Well, Makaya, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you
Yeah,
here, man.
absolutely.
Yeah.